Welcome back to Indie Hunter. My name is Vicedets, and this little series on this little channel is about putting a spotlight on indie games that come my way. For most of my time as a PC gamer, my exposure to indie games has been the chafe that comes with the 2 big games every month in the Humble Bundle pack. But now I'm starting to realize there's a lot of hidden gems over on itch.io. One of them was sent my way by a friend who knows this sort of thing is up my alley. It's a roguelike RPG that utilizes dice, and as somebody who's a fan of Thanks, Knight. Back on my other channel, Scam Likely, whenever I would do reviews, I'd always talk about the story in each game. I feel like I might as well have to remove that for the majority of the indie games I play. There's no story to slice and dice. There's no narrative, there's no dialogue at all, not even a simple 5 heroes team up to fight the bad guy. As far as I can tell, this game is just that. It's just 5 adventurers who go around fighting monsters, but I guess you don't need more than that if your game is good enough to warrant it. I assumed just reading the description of this game that it would be like Dicey Dungeons, which is the first game that kind of put dice games on my radar. Now to clarify, I'm obviously not talking about Milton Bradley board games, which I definitely played when I was a kid, and currently with my niece, or tabletop RPGs, which I've been playing and dungeon mastering for the last 10 years. I'm talking about this new way dice games have been made where, instead of dice determining the outcome of an event, you're using them as resources. You start the game off with 5 characters: a rogue, healer, wizard, knight, and a warrior. Each of these heroes have their own dice that have different effects, and at the start of each turn, you roll all of these dice. Each character will have a different theme and different abilities on their dice. The wizard character is used for farming mana for spells, healer can heal her allies and increase the max HP, the knight defends allies, the warrior deals damage, and the rogue does a little bit of everything. After you roll all of your dice at the beginning of the turn, you can lock in any of the dice that you like the outcome of and have some semblance of control over your character's action. Now, of course, if you don't like the results, you can just re-roll any dice you haven't locked in, but you can only do that twice. After the final roll, you're stuck with whatever the result is, good or bad. There's a lot of strategy involved with this way, but there's also a lot of luck involved with this too. Enemies will also roll for their actions, but unlike you, they don't get to re-roll for better or for worse. After every battle, you get new equipment, or you can level up one of 2 heroes. Equipment gives you access to new spells, and it can change your character's dice, either swapping out some of the sides of the dice for new effects, or empowering them, and leveling up your hero changes the die entirely. Each of the heroes still stays within their themes, spellcasting, defending, healing, etc., but it changes the way that they'll do it. There's at least 5 different classes for each hero that they can change into per level, and the class they can change into is randomly selected at the time when you're leveling them up. It's good to give some variety to the run. It's good for exploring new content. As an example of some of the class choices, the rogue can change classes into hunter or generalist types, and he can use range attacks to hit the backline hard, or as a generalist can fill in where their heroes might be lacking. The healer has a vampire class she can turn into, one of my personal favorites, where she can hurt herself to raise the max HP of allies, or deal damage to enemies to recover her own HP. Something interesting I found for class changes was that the knight character actually can turn into a necromancer. That's typically a mage class in fantasy games, but he still uses his abilities to defend his allies by preventing them from dying or from bringing them back from the dead whenever they do die. I've played a few runs at this point when putting out this video, but the video I'm playing now has uncut footage from my second run, where I got to level 19 of 20, and I'm pretty proud of that one. Every run I've played was different from the last one, and there's a lot of variables to keep it fresh and new. Now, the aesthetics portion of my review comes down to 2 things: visual and audio. Visually speaking, the sprite work is great. It reminds me a lot of older games, it pulls off the look really well, and it reminds me of Loop Hero in design. Unfortunately, the only places the sprite work really shows off or has a place to shine is the portraits of the monsters and heroes. One complaint I can make that isn't a nitpick, however, is the audio, or rather a lack of it entirely. There's no music or ambient sound in the game. I thought maybe the game had been exported with the music setting lowered for some reason or turned off, but the only audio slider in the settings is for sound effects. I ended up playing the game in silence for a little bit, but then turned on my Spotify playlist, had that in the background, as the only sounds in the game are dice rolling and stock sword and grunting sound effects, like hitting enemies and heroes with weapons. Overall, Slice and Dice is a great game, great concept. I've seen the dice used similarly in some tabletop and board games in the past, but this is the first time I've seen it in a video game, and I feel like the developer, if they keep adding new content, that's really going to serve it in the long run. These types of games I'm talking about are pretty expensive if you try and collect all the characters and classes for them, but if this is a video game, there's no extra cost to it. Slice and Dice is actually only $7, and after this review, if you still aren't sure that it's right for you, but you want to give it a chance, the developer is actually a bad enough dude to put out a demo that lets you play up to the 12th level out of 20. Now, if that sounds like an interesting thing to you, this game sounds interesting, it costs you $0 to try this game out. There's plenty of free play. I actually asked my friend who sent me this game, and he said he's played through the demo for hours. So there's plenty of content in there. All in all, it's a fun game. I hope there's more added in the future, specifically a soundtrack, but even in its current state, it's absolutely worth $7. It's a great time. It's going to keep you busy for a while. I definitely recommend Slice and Dice.